Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, hobos and tramps, cross-eyed mosquitoes and bow-legged ants. Lend me your ears. This is your news anchor, Warren Peace, and welcome to a very special edition of the Garlic News. It stinks. Tonight, our entire segment will be devoted to the memory of the world's craziest, most insane, funny, wild, wonderful, weird, goofy, loving, intelligent, difficult, happy, troublesome, engaging, and, well, basically indescribable and talented artist. Rest in peace, Mr. R. Lance Sterling. Mr. Sterling, a.k.a. Richard Hodgekinson, passed on several weeks ago in San Diego from unknown causes. He is survived by his blue widow, M. Liminally, and his dear son, Julian. Yes, in San Diego, an appropriate, perfect place for him to depart this planet, one that he loved dearly, albeit the city council was considering a bill to ban him from the city. Mad Magazine has declined to comment on his passing, but we have some rare and unusual footage here to commemorate this unique man and his incredible life.
Appreciate your generosity. We don't get to do this often. So I'm not saying, Dad, can I please have a tequila? I'm saying, if you say, well, I don't know if we're budgeted for a tequila, I'll turn the table over like Marlon Brando did in One-Eyed Jackson, really give you something to film. From Burns, the best laid plans of mice and men gang after glay and lay us naught but grief and pain for promised joy. Best laid plans of mice and men go oft astray. Years and years and years ago, when dinosaurs roamed the Malibu hills, I'd gone up to Topanga Canyon in high school. I went to school with Drew Billingsley, the son of Barbara Billingsley, whose boyfriend was Lou Ayres. She was the mother on, I don't know, Leave It to Beaver. Her father, knows best. She's one of those television actresses. I went to a Catholic parochial school in the 9th grade. This kid's uncle was Sherman Billingsley, the owner of the Stork Club in New York. His dad owned the Golden Bull restaurants. So we'd go down to the Golden Bull, which was at the bottom of Sunset Boulevard at Pacific Coast Highway. And we'd get a couple of cases of Cabernet Sauvignon and a case of steaks, filet mignon, and we'd go and be rowdy and interesting, as kids will do in our hot rod cars, while the other kids were having beer and 15-cent hamburgers. We were having $40 a bottle of wine and throwing them out the windows at passing cars in Topanga. I was in my early 20s. And the gallery owners were checking me out, and I'm kind of getting nervous, and I'm thinking, let me out of here. So I got into crafts. So I was doing crafts when Phyllis fired up the first Renaissance fair, and this kid I went to school with in high school, we were in an art class together. Bob Thomas was the original piper at the fair, and he was a big fat deal out in Pasadena, where he had a little pitch in the old town there. With Yellowstone Kelly was a sandal maker, if you can believe that. Yellowstone Kelly playing folk music and making sandals and being a crafts person and a folkie. Later on, of course, I knew Kelly later on, when he was Howard's battering ram, at the fair. And it was kind of unfortunate because Kelly had a good heart. He was just a drunken Indian, and that was the best thing about him, was that he was a drunken Indian. His other character manifestations were not quite that lovely. I owe Don Brown. He told my son's mother that Sterling was a rat. He told my son's mom what a rat I was. That made her more interested in me, which helped my son get born. I can't talk about Bill Gilkerson because Bill Gilkerson no longer exists. And I don't want to disrespect someone whose memory amounts to like a cluster of dust bunnies under an old cop. My favorite John Paul story can be very quickly told. At the 5th Fair at Peacock Gap, we had a camp, the Toads had a camp. I had my gypsy wagon down there. It was in the morning, and this was this big romantic adventure. Everybody then was kind of young and beautiful and doing it all for the first time. And it was about the time you showed up, and we're all overwhelmed by it. Nobody could figure out what you saw, because we were too busy doing what we were doing to pay much attention to how we were. We were just doing what we were doing. We were kind of beyond the cutting edge. In other words, people came after and emulated what we did. But we weren't thinking of ourselves as being all that damn inventive. We were just kicking it and having a good time. John Paul had, he was a predatory sex fiend. And he had some woman that he was violating, and they were together there in the morning, and with the dawn mists parted, and John arose naked from whatever hole that he'd crept into with this woman. And I happened to be over there on the eastern side road of the lower level, and I observed this. Well, I know John well enough, and I've been in the Army, I've seen guys, but John was formidably endowed with a pecker on him that looked like it belonged on an Army mule. It was as long as your arm, see? But and it was semi-tumescent, whatever he'd been doing, it was not an erection, but it was kind of could have, it was, a lot of people wished they could have an erection like that. It was just a great big thing, And this woman, this matronly woman, was making her way toward the parking lot, shuffling along in the morning. A very respectable, probably one of Phyllis's gay old friends, or whatever. About a 250-pound woman in her middle years, and sees this. And in this struggle that she was having with herself, not to react, not to look, walked smack into a great big old bay tree and knocked herself cold. Various different eccentric, wonderful characters that were there at the early days of the Renaissance Fair. Russ Thomas was a guy, I remember he came at Phyllis Patterson and picked her up and held her around the waist and lifted her off the ground and suggested that they have sex right now over here in the bushes. And with perfect dignity and aplomb, she thanked him for his interest, asked to be put down, and Russ Thomas, this toothless degenerate, went staggering off to be sick while Phyllis went on about her business, and that happened right in front of me.